Hello everyone, Sandra here, and today I'm gonna respond to 4 videos. One by Sargon, that's the one I'm gonna start with, and I'm also gonna respond to Dave, Computing Forever, as well as this creepy guy, I can't remember his name now, who appeared on Dave Rubin, as well as Matt Christensen. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because they are displaying their ignorance on these topics. And it's not a small ignorance either. Like, we're talking pretty fucking severe levels of ignorance. If that is in fact what it is, I'm suspecting that most of it is actually just them trying to basically revision the narrative, if you will, and they're trying to defend Trump to any cost. And look, let me just preface this by saying that not everything that Trump has done during this pandemic is bad. Trump is right when he pointed out that he did close the borders to China when everyone else told him that there was no need. But he did that anyway. That's good. That's good. And yeah, he decided to enact this act. I think it's what is it called? The Consumer Act or something. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but basically it means that the government can force companies to produce whatever they want. That's good, but what's not good about that is that he just sat on his thumbs for a week or so before he actually started to tell them what exactly to produce. So look, Trump has done some good things, you know, and to not be honest about that, that's just shitty. But at the same time, we have to be honest. He could have done a far better job. He reacted way too late. And also, the whole point of his quarantine was that while this quarantine was under effect, you basically set up the infrastructure where you can test people and do some tracking and whatever when people go back into society, so that you can play this game of whack-a-mole where, you know, after quarantine, you basically shut down these hotspots that are going to pop up again before you have, you know, an exponential infection rate again. So the whole point of a quarantine like this is that you're supposed to shut down society for a while so you get, you know, the spread rate under control. And then during the time you're doing this, you set up the infrastructure where you can just, as soon as possible, as when you know, kickstart society again, you have tools in place in society where whenever you notice a hotspot, you can just shut that down and quarantine those individuals, basically. But yeah, that's not what Trump has done. You know, he hasn't set up the infrastructure to deal with, you know, the ending of his quarantine. And so what's going to happen? What's going to happen is, you know, for a few weeks, it's going to seem like, you know, it's back to normal, and then this exponential infection rate is going to catch up to everyone again, and then you will probably have to have a new quarantine just because you didn't do what the fuck you were supposed to do during the first one. But yeah, so I mean, look, there's definitely things that you can give Trump applause on, but there's also a shitload of things that you need to be honest about. He has not dealt with well at all from any standard. Yeah.
While you acknowledge you're not a physician, you do promote these medicines extensively here. How do you not go so far as to be giving medical advice?
At the beginning of April, Donald Trump mentioned in one of his regular press briefings that the press have decided they don't really like covering because they make him look good, that the drug hydroxychloroquine, which, and I'm not a physician of any sort, I had no idea what this was until this broke, and now I have to figure out what this is.
Maybe that means that you should, I don't know, be silent about it until further notice. You know, if you're admitting here, I mean, you're literally admitting here, Sargon, that you that you don't know anything about this, and yet you feel like, oh, you need to put your opinion out there. And then you have to sort of start to wonder about the motives as to why you would do this. I mean, clearly you're aware that, you know, your opinion on this is not the best. So why do you want to put your opinion out there? You know, why do you feel you need to comment on this? Well, the reason is you want to defend your daddy. That's what's going on here. Yeah.
But the media and the pundit class and a large chunk of public-facing scientists, academics, and doctors all decided no, because Trump had said something, we have to poke holes in it. And so,
no. That, Sargon, is called an appeal to conspiracy. Okay, it's a logical fallacy. You're inventing motives to a group of people. Like, look, if you want to criticize the media, you know, go ahead. I don't give a shit about that. I don't care about the media. Are a lot of media institutions like the CNN, MSNBC, CBS, and whatever, are they anti-Trump? Yeah, they are. I mean, that's subjective, definitely. But then again, you also have huge, you know, outlets in the mainstream media as well that are, you know, pro-Trump, like Fox News, Breitbart, and, you know, Daily Caller, and whatever. So the thing is, you know, you can find both sides on this. But if you want to claim that the media is just, you know, disregarding Trump because he's Trump, you know, whatever, I don't care. But when you start to insinuate that the reason why, you know, educated people on the subject, if you start to suggest that virologists, biochemists, physicians and whatever, if you're starting to insinuate that they are against what Trump is promoting here just because it's coming from Trump, I mean, in that case, you can use that reasoning to anything. You know, I mean, what's the point then of even, you know, asking an actual expert on the issue if you're just going to take Trump's word for it anyway? Because that's essentially, that's the kind of dynamic you're setting up here. And I mean, either you're completely unaware of it, or you are aware of it, but you don't care because you're being dishonest. Now, which one it is, I'm going to let my audience decide.
they decided to go after it. This was The Guardian's response. He says a miracle cure, but don't believe the hype. There is no magic cure. It's based on a French study that apparently showed that a number of their patients got better when they were given this particular drug, and then Chinese researchers suggested actually it doesn't do anything. They did their tests over in China, and they found that there was no particular improvement, and so basically The Guardian have decided to take the Chinese research as being canon, and the French research no longer exists. What should people...
No, that's not what's going on here, Sargon. It means that the research is mixed. Okay, that's what's going on here. The research is mixed. Now, I don't know if you've heard of something called the burden of evidence, or the burden of proof. If you make the positive claim that this drug can treat this virus very efficiently, like Trump is. I mean, look, do you want to watch the tweet? Do you want me to show you the tweet? I'll show you the tweet. Okay, so this is the actual tweet by Donald J. Trump. Hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin, taken together, have a real chance to be one of the biggest game changers in the history of medicine. The FDA has moved mountains. Thank you. Hopefully they will both. H works better with A. International Journal of Antimicrobial, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so here's the thing. Here's the problem, Sargon. When Trump tweeted this out, he was proclamating. This is a proclamation, okay? He was telling people, oh, this thing will probably, be a real game changer and whatever, Trump also lied, Sargon. Trump lied about the FDA moving forwards on this. The FDA had not moved forwards on this, at least not at the time. That is a lie. The FDA did not approve this drug to be a regular treatment. And Trump did claim this. So Trump actually lied, Sargon. He did. Whether you want to admit it or not, that's another story. But the problem is when you have the President of the United States who tweets this sort of thing, that's dangerous. And look, did he intend for people to, basically take fish tank cleaner and whatever and end up dead? No, of course not. Of course not. But the problem is, Sargon, he doesn't think, period. He just fucking does. Like he doesn't think about the consequences of his tweets, and then he just tweets it out. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes that can be entertaining. That's one of the things I like about Trump. He sort of shoots from the hips. It can be entertaining, but it can also be very dangerous when you're dealing with medical, situations. This gave people, hope that can possibly be false. And, he's a public figure. He's the most powerful man in the world. And he has a very loyal voting base. That and a huge part of them are very rabid and will literally swallow anything he tells them to swallow. In this case, they actually did. He should be more responsible about what the fuck he's tweeting out here. Trump has on numerous occasions said that this drug hydrochloroquine, that it's going to work wonders and whatever. He has said this literally. It's not fake news. It's nothing like that. He has done this, Sargon. Do you understand? Do you understand the seriousness of this situation? Here you have a man who has zero qualifications to speak on anything regarding medicine, telling people about a miracle drug, when the guy doesn't even know the difference between different vaccines. Like he legit thought that a vaccine against the common flu would be just as effective as the vaccine they're trying to produce against SARS-CoV-2. He thinks this. This is how ignorant this man is. And I don't give a shit that he's Donald Trump. I don't give a shit that Donald Trump is tweeting this sort of thing out. I care because it's the United States president, period. I don't give a shit who's the president. If you tweet this sort of thing out, and you also insinuate in your tweet that the FDA has approved this, and then also say numerous times that the FDA has approved this, that's dangerous. I don't see why you can't just be honest about this, Sargon. But yeah, the science on this is mixed, Sargon. Okay, it's mixed. So it's not that the media is just citing that, it doesn't work, period. No. What they're saying is, it could work, could also not work. So putting too much faith into it, which is what Trump is doing, is fallacious.
People do instead. The latest Chinese research suggests that using hydroxychloroquine is no better than more conventional coronavirus treatments, such as bed rest, antiviral drugs, and oxygen inhalation. There are about 50 different research efforts to find a vaccine, blah, 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 but the conclusion, there is no magic cure for the pandemic, no matter what Trump says. Because that's what this is about. This is about Trump having said something, and the desperate, eternal need to prove him 100% wrong on every subject.
But we don't have time to...
No, Sargon. You're... I don't know what the fuck it is with you. It's like it's right in front of you, and you still say this sort of thing. It's dumb.
Go and say, gee, let's take a couple of years and test it out, and let's go and test with the test tubes and the laboratories. We don't have time. I'd love to do that. But we have people dying today. As we speak, there are people dying.
The doctors who are treating coronavirus patients, they have the medical expertise to determine whether or not they should prescribe hydroxychloroquine.
And many of them do.
there are already clinical trials in place looking at hydroxychloroquine.
Sure.
So
within a week, you get stuff like this. From ScienceAlert.com. By the way, a study of high-dose chloroquine for COVID-19 patients has been a study doing that has been stopped due to patient deaths. So some of the people have died. Therefore, the study is over. Therefore, you know that's bad, don't you? By the way,
No, Sargon. If you notice that the patients are dying, and the whole point of the study is to try and fucking cure them, don't you think that's cause for concern? And don't you think you should pull the plug on the study then? Like, oh my god, this is so dumb. It's so dumb. My god. Oh, I legit think I need to take an aspirin. I'm not even kidding. I'm not even kidding, folks. I legit need to take a fucking aspirin. Alright, so I've just had an aspirin, and hopefully this headache is gonna pass.
doctor who pushed this, he's been cited by the feds. What's he been cited for? Well, the answer is mail fraud. So not relevant, but you have to go 3/4 of the way down this article to find that out. Trump's hydroxy...
Gee, Sargon, could it be that when you have a situation where people are fucking dying and you don't want to be irresponsible regarding their treatment and cause even more unnecessary deaths, could it be that you focus on that more than, ad homs? It's, oh God. Carl, what the fuck happened with you? What the fuck happened with you? I don't know.
Chloroquine obsession is hurting non-COVID patients too. Why? Because this drug used to treat things like malaria and lupus, and apparently they're struggling to get it because it's being diverted for COVID-19. And look...
Don't you think that's a serious fucking issue? Like, oh my God, Sargon. Here's the thing, okay? Let me explain how this works, okay? You have a limited supply of this drug, okay? You have a limited supply. And you have 2 patients, let's say. One patient has malaria, and you know this drug works against malaria. The other patient has COVID-19, and you don't know 100% that this drug is going to be effective for treating COVID-19. Now, let's say that you only have 1 can of pills in this hypothetical with hydrochloroquine. Which one would you give the pills? Now, if you answer the one with COVID-19 when you know that there's only 1 can available, if that's your answer, Sargon, I have to say, fuck you. No. Seriously, fuck you. That is beyond fucking retarded. Of course you're going to give it to the person who has malaria because you know for 100%, that person is actually going to get better from it. This is not hard, Sargon. If you have a limited supply of a drug and you know that it works against other diseases, shouldn't you prioritize those diseases to be treated first, and then, you do COVID-19 secondarily? And I know that a lot of people are dying right now from COVID-19, but that doesn't give you carte blanche to sign essentially a death order by proxy to people with malaria and other parasitic illnesses.
Look, here's another French study that shows actually it doesn't help. So nothing works. It's all hopeless. This has not been verified, and that appears to be the very crux of the argument.
Well, yeah, that is literally the argument. Like, it's even in the articles that you're showing here. If you read them, Sargon, not just the headlines, but if you actually read them, that's what you're going to find. They literally tell you that, yeah, this could work, but so far there's no strong evidence that it does. Now, let me just add one thing here. I'm actually friends with a geneticist, and he's actually working right now on this virus, SARS-CoV-2. So he's a geneticist, and he's actually working. He's actually studying this virus right now. And I'm not going to tell you too much information about him or whatever, and what the nature of the research is, but so I'm having a back and forth with him sometimes regarding this virus. And basically what he's told me is, and that's also what you're starting to find with certain headlines regarding this virus, it seems like this virus is attacking the blood. Okay? So it's attacking the blood and form tiny little blood clots, and that appears to be what's causing, most of the damage to the organs. And the rationale then is that, hey, maybe these anti-malarial drugs, and maybe they will work, because what those drugs do is that they make it so the parasite can't very easily attach to the cells in your blood. And it seems like maybe this could be true for the virus too. Just like a parasite can't easily attach itself to cells in your blood, maybe the virus can't either if you have this drug in your system. And there are other drugs that have been shown to be somewhat successful, like favipiravir. But the problem is, again, that's not a peer-reviewed study. And all of these studies, Sargon, that show that hydrochloroquine could be effective, all of them are anecdotal. They're not peer-reviewed, and that's the crux here. So yeah, you hit the nail on its fucking head. And yet you persist in this delusion that it's simply just that Trump is for it, therefore everyone is against it. My God, like, yeah, I'm speechless.
Should we finish in about a year?
Why not just let the science speak for itself? Why are you promoting this drug?
I'm not. I'm just
You
saying,
come
very
out-
simply, I'm not at all. I'm not. Look.
Simply, it hasn't been given their seal of approval.
Yeah, sure, he's totally not promoting the drug. It's not like he's been lying that the FDA has approved it or anything. No, it's all just fake news, isn't it? Seriously, Sargon, and every other fucking fanboy of Trump, go fuck yourselves. I'm sick and tired of you. Seriously, just go fuck yourselves.
So obviously I looked this up on Wikipedia, where else are you going to start? First place, I'm not an expert on this. So I just right out to see what the side effects are. And the side effects for short-term treatment of acute malaria include abdominal cramps, diarrhea, heart problems, reduced appetite, headache, nausea and vomiting. Right, so it's not fun, it makes you feel sick, but that's not fatal. So if you're suffering from a disease that looks like it might kill you, taking something that might make you feel sick to save your life seems like a worthwhile trade-off to me. Now, for like prolonged treatments, it can have much more serious side effects, but we're not talking prolonged treatments, we're talking short-term doses. So why wouldn't we even at least acknowledge this was a possibility, even if it hasn't been fully verified? I mean,
Oh my God. Sargon. Yes. Hydrochloroquine has severe side effects, and yes, it can be fatal. It can be fatal. I don't... Oh my God, the science is in. The science has been in for years on this. It can be fatal. I don't understand why you can't just be... Oh, God, this is... And also, I wouldn't call, blindness a side effect that is simply just not fun. It's debilitating, So it's even if it wasn't fatal, let's say, making someone blind that's hardly a good thing, Yeah.
There are apparently thousands of doctors around the world who are far less up their own asses about this and actually want to try and save some lives, because this is one from Los Angeles.
Okay, so I see how it is. If doctors say that, hey, we need to be careful and we can't just willy-nilly, prescribe this to our patients because it hasn't been tested yet on COVID-19 properly, if they do that, that's only because they're against Trump and they don't care about their patients. But, these doctors who say, no, we need to give everyone this, blah, 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 blah. No, they truly care about their patients' safety, Wow. That's quite the mental gymnastics there, buddy. Are you going for the gold medal? I don't know. Seriously, just go fuck yourself. If that's what you believe, do you honestly think that the majority of doctors care so little about their patients that they care more about owning Trump than they do saving lives? Do you really think that? Do you honestly think that, Sargon? If you honestly think that, you're pathetic. I don't know what to tell you. That's the most pathetic thing I've ever heard, I think, from you. You're essentially telling everyone that the majority of doctors, and yes, it's the majority of doctors, Sargon, that are saying that, hey, we need to be careful with prescribing this stuff. You're saying that they don't care about their patients. May I remind you that these people, they go to work right now, risking their lives, actually. Because, especially in the US, where they don't have adequate protection gear. So these nurses and doctors, they go to work, and they actually risk their health and even their lives right now, just so they can save people. And you mean to tell me that the majority of them don't care about their patients? They care more about owning Trump. You are a fucking intellectual midget, Sargon. You are a fucking intellectual midget. And no one, absolutely no one, should ever, under any circumstance, take you seriously. Because that is just, not only is that fucking retarded, when objective reality tells you that you're wrong, greatly so, but it's also just, it's just so incredibly petty and so lacking of good faith. My God. That is some real malevolent cynicism.
So this was reported in ABC7, right? Dr. Anthony Cardillo has been seeing some very promising results. Every patient I've prescribed it to has been very, very ill, and within 8 to 12 hours they were basically symptom-free. So clinically, I'm seeing a resolution. So okay, maybe this hasn't gone through double-blind tests and all that, so you can say this is, well, anecdotal, sure, but these people
Yeah, it is anecdotal. All of it is anecdotal.
are dying. He said he's found it only works in combination with zinc.
Oh my god, I'm so sick and tired of his argument. Like, oh, but these people are dying anyway, so you might as well just get it to them. It's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to debunk that argument in a little while. Okay.
Because it does something, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? I don't care. I'm not a scientist, right? But the point is,
No shit.
if the option is die of this disease or test an anecdotal cure that has not been scientifically verified, which one am I going to take? I mean, it seems quite obvious, doesn't it? But again, there's not the only doctor. One from New York, as reported in New York Post, Dr. Mohammed Alum, an infectious disease specialist affiliated with Plainview Hospital, said 81% of infected COVID patients he treated at 3 Long Island nursing homes recovered from the contagion. In a crisis, I realized I had to do something. If this was my dad, what would I do? And I'd do anything to help. He decided not to put a particular combination together because apparently there might be side effects with heart problems in patients who have got high risk of that for underlying issues. And so he replaced it with another, a different drug that doesn't have any complications with the heart. And apparently that, in his opinion, has worked as well. And again, there are others, right? There are plenty of these examples. So why are these being ignored from the mainstream media narrative? I mean, there are some.
No, they're not being ignored. The mainstream media is telling you. Again, all the articles that you've listed so far, if you actually read them, Sargon, you're going to find that they say that yes, there's anecdotal studies that say that this can be effective. All of them. Literally all of them, Sargon, are saying this. No one's denying this. Literally no one. This is a huge straw man. Like, oh my god. Oh my god. It's like, and the funny thing is, you show these articles. You show these articles on the screen as you're saying this. And they all prove you wrong if people actually take the time to read them. Which you don't do. Because you know, fuck research, I guess. Oh my god, this is... Oh, Jesus Christ. You know, there was a time when it was fun to debunk Sargon like this. Like, there was a time when I actually kind of enjoyed debunking him a little bit, because, you know, at least then he put a little bit more effort into his stuff. But over time, as I've made more and more responses and debunkings of him, I've just lost the spark, folks. Like, it's not fun anymore. It's like, there's nothing about this that's fun for me. I hope you guys realize that. I'm not doing this because it's enjoyable. It's not. I'm doing this because I feel like I literally have to... I mean, I'm not a big channel by any means, you know. And, I mean, I get about, on average, I don't know, I guess my average is like 300, maybe 400 views per video, something like that. And even when it comes to videos that I put like a shitload of effort into, you know, actual fucking documentary level videos, like analyzed COVID-19, the history, the spread, and how to fight it. I put so much effort into that video, like a ridiculous amount of effort. And it's so incredibly well liked. And it has like not even 300 views. So I know I'm a nobody. I know that, like, practically speaking, nobody is watching my videos. I'm a little fish in a very big pond. Well, actually, it's not even a pond. It's a fucking ocean. But you know what? I do my thing. I still do this because at least I am one voice. And it's not a, you know, loud voice I have here on this platform, but at least it's something. So I'm not doing this because I actually enjoy it. I do it because, well, almost no one else is doing it. Almost no one is responding to his videos, debunking him. And so might as well be me, you know.
Some publications who will say, look, Trump is right to push hydroxychloroquine because it might do something. It would be better to have done something, and that might fail, than just let the person die. It just seems crazy to me to say, well, look, we've got this one option, but we've not tested it, and it might be dangerous too. You're going to die of this disease. You may as well. What have you got to lose? Like,
Right, okay, so I told you before that I was going to debunk this argument, because I've heard it so many times now when it comes to this. And here's the argument. Okay, the argument goes, oh, but a lot of these people are dying anyway, so you might as well just give them, you know, hydrochloroquine and just get it over with and see if it works or not. I mean, there's nothing to lose. First of all, that argument assumes that there are no options. There are. Hydrochloroquine is not the only drug that is a contender to be an effective treatment. Okay, it's not the only one. There's others like favipiravir that has also shown success, although not when it comes to those who are seriously ill in this, but rather it works well against those who have mild to medium serious symptoms. But once you're so ill that you end up in a respirator or a ventilator, yeah, that's pretty much when it doesn't work anymore. And coincidentally, that's pretty much what you find as well with hydroxychloroquine as well, to be honest. But yeah, look, it's not the only drug out there. There's other drugs that are in some anecdotal studies showing promise too. So why would you just put your faith into this drug? That's strike number one when it comes to that argument. It assumes that this is the only contender. It's not. So why would you prioritize hydroxychloroquine over other drugs that might as well, be tried as well? Why should you only go with this one? Second of all, we know that this drug has some serious side effects. And in cases where it doesn't actually save people's lives, it might actually just cause an even more painful death. So yeah, third of all, this is a very dangerous reasoning as well, because look, we have these standards in medicine for a reason, okay? There's something called ethics, Sargon, okay? There's medical ethics that doctors and researchers have to abide by. There's a reason why you have to be careful, even in these situations where it's about life and death. Even when it seems like people have nothing to lose, you still have to be careful, because you're setting a precedent. And if the precedent becomes, oh, well, these people have nothing to lose, so we might as well just experiment on them, the problem is this might actually become ingrained into the medical modus operandi, and this may actually become a real ethical conundrum in the future. So yeah, we have these standards for a reason, Sargon.
Other than saying Trump was wrong, this wasn't a miracle cure, which he didn't really say, but I'll get to it. You can...
He did say that the FDA had approved of it, which it hadn't. That's a lie, Sargon. Just be honest about it.
You can expect exactly the kind of rhetoric that led him in saying the words miracle cure. It was couched in a much greater context of, I'm not a doctor, but the doctors tell me that this might work. But anyway, India has decided, why not give it a try? They're sending out the drug to 55 countries, and one country that's using it that I think that we can trust their standards is probably Australia. They just figure, why not give it a go? What have we got to lose? We haven't got any better options. And in the face of a lack of better options, again, I stress, it is surely better to try something than nothing. Because, as the Lancet say, a medical journal say, and again, they have been in opposition to Donald Trump promoting this on the basis that they have not yet confirmed the science. This will say, first, hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah, so they're not opposing Trump then, are they? They're opposing the irresponsible proclamation that this would be a miracle drug. They're basing it in actual science then, Sargon. So stop framing scientists, caution about this. Stop framing that as though it's only because they hate Trump. That's deeply dishonest and frankly insulting.
Quinn is not expensive, readily available, and seems to be safe. There we go. That's a good enough reason to use it, is it not? To try it. Even if it's only just a...
Sargon, what they mean by safe, and of course you don't know this because you know fuck all about science, what they mean is that under controlled circumstances, yes, it can be safe. But safe in medical terms doesn't necessarily mean the same thing as safe does for you and me in ordinary colloquial tongue. Safe simply means that under the right circumstances, yes, it has a minimal amount of side effects and risk attached to it. But much of the treatment of these patients are not ideal. Okay?
The placebo. However, clinical observations of the effects of this drug in patients with COVID-19 have not included critically ill patients who are receiving several other medications and have organ failure, such as whatever, which might influence drug metabolism and potentially increase the risk of adverse...
Just like I said before, most of the cases where they say that, people have gotten better after being, given hydrochloroquine, as well as favipiravir, it's been people who are not that far gone in their symptoms.
Events. Yeah, but these people are surely dying. Okay, there might be adverse effects, yes, but there also might be a cure. It might work. So who knows? But second, the clinical data is far from convincing. The first study reported by blah, 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 indicates it might be effective, but has several limitations. Let me explain to you the limitations of this science. Yeah, sure, it might be scientifically wrong. It might not. But we don't know until further testing is done. And how long is that going to take? Well, a while, isn't it? I mean...
My God, you're such an intellectual midget. It's not even funny. It's not even funny, Sargon. Like, just think about it. Think about your reasoning here. Think about your reasoning. Do you see the danger of your reasoning? Yes or no? Stupid question. Of course you don't. Of course you don't. We have standards for a reason, Sargon. And if you don't understand that, I don't know what to tell you.
In the hitting warp speed on this testing of this drug, but it could show in weeks whether it works. Well, we've got hundreds of people dying every day in this country. Why don't we just give it to them and see if they don't die? Maybe they can survive for long enough for the clinical test to come in to show you whether it does or doesn't work. Who knows? It's really insufferable. Again, the opposition.
No, Sargon. What is insufferable is that you, insert fucking big brain meme, think that you can analyze and dissect this symptom and prescribe a cure better than actual educated people in the field. That is what's insufferable. And my God, man, you're so fucking insufferable. You have no idea. It's not even funny. Like I said before, it's not even funny anymore. It's not even funny anymore.
From the scientists, from the media, is just, well, it's going outside of our control. We can't definitively say yes or no whether this is correct, right or wrong. And it's like, yeah, that's life sometimes, isn't it? Sometimes you just have to gamble. Sometimes you have to try. But instead, they'd sit there and honestly...
Well, Sargon, if you're laying there, and you're potentially dying, if you want to gamble, go right ahead. Go right ahead. But how about you keep away from the medical field? Because that's something that doctors, people who actually know something about this, that's their decision. And your opinion just doesn't matter. I know it hurts your ego, but it really doesn't matter. Nor should it. Because not only are you displaying an incredible ignorance, but you're also showing an unwillingness to assume good faith in people who have sworn to save lives, Sargon. Do you understand the seriousness of your accusations before? You have accused these people, Sargon, multiple times of being against a potential treatment that can save, potentially tens of thousands of people. You're saying that people are against it merely because they don't like Trump. That is literally what you've been saying. So don't you fucking dare act all high and mighty. Because you're nothing more than a pathetic little fucking worm. Fucking hell.
See, lie like this. Man dead from taking chloroquine product after Trump house drove for coronavirus. This is not what happened. The guy ate fish tank cleaner. Trump did not say eat fish tank cleaner, and they did it. Him and his wife did it because it had half.
Hey, thank you, Captain Obvious. Obviously, he didn't want people to fucking eat fish tank cleaner. But don't you see the irresponsibility of you as the president, and knowing you have such a rabid fan base? Don't you see the irresponsibility of tweeting out that the FDA, insinuating essentially in a tweet that the FDA has moved this forward? They hadn't. Again, that's a lie, Sargon. Trump lied in this tweet. Do you understand? He lied. His lie led to people doing this. Now, did he intend for people to do this? Of course not. No one's saying that. Literally no one. But what they are pointing out, correctly so, is that it's irresponsible of a president to do that.
Of the word written on the pack. That's not what Trump was suggesting, and it's unfair to try and tie that to him. This is dumb. It was a tragedy, obviously, but it's a thing that was just a silly thing to do.
No, look, it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy, period. Now, are these people morons for doing this? Yeah, of course. But they're still human beings, and they're dead now. And they weren't killed by the virus. They were killed by man and his fucking stupidity. That's not defendable, Sargon. And the fact that you're trying to defend this, it's pathetic. You're that desperate to cling on to this notion that Trump is standing up against, insert whatever group, you want, the SJWs, the fucking deep state, blah, 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 whatever. You want to preserve the idea that he's this brave soldier in some kind of justified fight, and that any opposition he faces It's without merit. God, that's pathetic.
And I guess out of 300 million people, there was one silly person who did that. And the thing is, the media has been framing it, because Trump used the term miracle cure, they've been framing it as if he was just like, yeah, this is definitely going to solve all your problems, trust me on this.
You know what I'm trying to do? I'm trying to
You
save
come here
lives.
every day, right, sir, talking about the benefits of
I want them to
program.
try it, and it may work and it may not work. But if it doesn't work, it's nothing lost by doing it, nothing. Because we know long-term what I want to save lives. It may not work, in which case, hey, it didn't work. And it may work, in which case, it's going to save a lot of lives. Now, a lot of people say, if the people walking in prior to getting it, if they take it, it has a profound effect. Well, maybe it doesn't, maybe it doesn't. I don't want to wait a year and a half to find out. And only CNN would ask that question. Fake news.
Anyway, folks, so remember, I'm not a doctor.
Right. Let's move on to the next video.
Another day, another round of coronavirus COVID-19 stories. This article is from the Irish Times. Simon Harris has recently said Irish public will have to learn to live alongside coronavirus. Minister says social distancing will be enforced until vaccine available, but restrictions may be tweaked after May 5th. Ah yes, until they take the snake oil, the Irish people will not be free. TheVillageMagazine.ie has the following. Media fails to report truth. Success in Ireland's handling of coronavirus. The ICUs and graveyards will not be swamped. We're looking at 500 to 1,000 deaths and 19,000 infections, not 1.9 million. The projections were out by a factor of 100. Actually, Leo Varadkar had previously said that 85,000 people could die in Ireland from COVID-19. Also, just for some perspective, 500 to 1,000 deaths would be in line with the number of annual flu deaths here in Ireland. But of course, the data modelers, healthcare system and the government will put this massive reduction down to the success of the social distancing and lockdown policy and then pat themselves on the back for their amazing work in keeping everybody safe, right?
See, this is the ultimate sign of, how shall I put this? Someone who is stunted in their intellectual growth. Let's go with that. What Dave is doing here, okay, he's setting up the framework. All right? He's setting up the framework that even though the death toll is lower than projected, all this means is that he was correct all along. How? Because this proves his conspiracy, okay? This proves that this was really not that bad, according to him. And he will, just right off the bat, he will ignore that actually this is most likely because of the quarantine. Because, you know, when you don't have an actual vaccine, you have to do the second best thing and, you know, prevent people from catching this thing in the first place. You know, basically a social vaccine, social distancing. But no, he straight off the bat just lets everybody know that even if the evidence points to that, he's not going to accept it because it's somehow something that he's predicted, you see. This is called an ad hoc. It's the ad hoc fallacy. And basically what an ad hoc is, let's look at the description. Very often we desperately want to be right and hold on to certain beliefs despite any evidence presented to the contrary. As a result, we begin to make up excuses as to why our beliefs could still be true and is still true despite the fact that we have no real evidence for what we are making up. And so basically in logical form, it's claim X is true because of evidence Y. Evidence Y is demonstrated not to be acceptable evidence. Therefore, it must be guess Z then, even though there's no evidence for guess Z. And we can take an example here just to show what I mean. Frida, I just know that Raymond is just waiting to ask me out. Edna, he has been seeing Rose for 3 months now. Frida, he's just seeing her to make me jealous. Edna, they're engaged. Frida, well, that's just his way of making sure I know about it. I mean, how is this not what Dave is doing? How is this not what Dave is doing right now? You know, just insert instead, you know, Dave. I just know that they're conspiring to make this virus a bigger deal than it actually is. To any other person who knows anything about virology, who knows anything about how a virus spreads, to everyone else, the fact that you don't have as many deaths as was originally projected, while you also have far fewer people at the same time frame, mind you, who are seeing each other. So way less people are actually interacting, which is how we know that this virus spreads, like any virus spreads. This is going on at the same time as the death rate is not as high as it should be. To anyone else with a brain, that means that, hey, people are seeing each other less, therefore the virus has less chance to spread, and then, of course you're not going to have as many deaths. The way you think instead is, Oh, but this just proves that it wasn't a big deal in the first place. But hey, dummy, people are seeing each other less. How how do you explain that? Oh, but yeah, it's dumb. It's so dumb.
Despite the fact that the same policies just trashed the economy for many years to come, massively increased our national debt, destroyed many small businesses throughout the country, caused hundreds of thousands of people to become unemployed, made our fundamental constitutional rights and freedoms entirely negotiable because the economy...
No, Dave, what you're talking about here, I mean, let's go to the whole rights thing. No, it's always been negotiable when it comes to a crisis like this, you know? Most nations have some kind of clause in their constitution, which means that during a time of crisis, and this is a time of crisis, it's a fucking pandemic, Dave, the government does temporarily have the right to suspend mobility of the people. Don't like it? Move to a nation that doesn't have it. I don't know what to fucking tell you. You know, you're among the first people to say that, oh, if you don't like Ireland, you don't move. Well, it seems like you don't like Ireland, so move, I guess. But anyway, so yeah, the government does absolutely have the right to do this, whether you want to admit it or not. But the government, its job is to make sure that the population is safe. The way it does this is to prevent any chance from this virus from spreading. You have to engage in social distancing, period. Okay, you can't get away from this, Dave. It really is that simple. It really is that simple. Yeah. And second of all, do you know what else would cause your economy to basically be fucked? If you have a certain percentage of your working force dying. Okay. So, yeah. Let's say that this thing has a mortality of just 1%, let's say. And let's say that, you know, the majority of your working force gets this thing. Well, that means that 1% of them is going to die. Okay, so 1% of them dies. That's going to have a huge impact on your GDP. On the other hand, if you merely take a pause in the economy, yeah, you know, for a while, you're going to have a dip, a noticeable one in your GDP. But technically, if you do this right, you should be able to pick up right where we were. Now, of course, you're going to have unemployment and whatever, but here's the thing. People who are unemployed, they are going to go back to work someday. If people are dead, Dave, they don't go back to work. They're gone forever. So I'm going to ask you again, what do you prefer? To take a break in trade, which will indeed have terrible consequences, make no mistake, but it does mean that everyone is still there, ready to get a new job if needed be. It's going to take a while, but eventually everyone's going to get back into employment at some point, and the GDP can start ticking upwards again. Or do you want option B, where a large portion of the population fucking dies, and which is the same, technically speaking, as being unemployed in this situation, but this time they're not going back to work? It's very simple, Dave. One is obviously better than the other, and despite the economic consequences of this, it's still better than letting a portion of your population just die. Again, this is simple math, Dave. You want to argue against the numbers? Well, I mean, it would be odd from a programmer like you.
Is wrecked, this will likely cause widespread poverty and therefore a future health crisis. I mean, who knows just how much alcoholism, drug abuse, domestic violence, depression and suicide has increased by because of the lockdowns and social distancing. But good news.
See what I mean with ad hocs? So, this thing is successful. It gets fewer deaths, you know, which is a success. But no, he has to find a way where this is actually still a loss because he can't handle the fact that he might be wrong. Seriously, Dave, go fuck yourself.
At least, we now have mandatory vaccinations to look forward to, despite the fact that by the time the vaccination comes along, COVID-19 will no longer be an issue, as we'll likely have herd immunity by then. The Village magazine article continues. Those who predicted swamped ICUs, scandalous shortages of equipment, and overflowing morgues in Ireland were utterly wrong. If you haven't realised that, you're not following. The Irish Times, Irish Independent, RTE, and other media in Ireland have failed their democratic duty to keep the public aware of the significance of the evolving pattern of coronavirus cases in Ireland over the last 3 weeks. There may indeed be the darkest days ahead, as the Taoiseach intoned to the media head nodding on Easter Sunday, but there is no evidence for it. I am not saying this to be provocative, but because it is the truth.
Dave, no expert has said that this is a doomsday virus. No one has said that this is gonna, kill like a fucking third of the population or some shit like the plague. The plague was as close to an apocalyptic virus. It's not a virus. It's the plague is caused by a bacteria. I think the name of it is Yersinia pestis, if I remember correctly. My microbiology is a little rusty, but I think that's the name of it. That thing was as close to a doomsday pestilence, if you will, that you can get without actually being a doomsday pestilence. It is the worst outbreak that we know of in human history. The one that's in the Middle Ages, that's it. That is. And not even that one, though, killed more than maybe half of the population in Europe at most, but it's more likely it's about a third, maybe a quarter. But regardless, it killed a huge load of people, a huge load. And many of the people who did survive, they were maimed for life. So not even that, though, was actually, an apocalyptic bug. Not even that caused an actual apocalypse. That was the worst one we know of. So no one has said at any point that this is going to cause a fucking doomsday scenario where people are going to die like flies. No. But you cannot deny that a virus that could potentially kill a certain percentage, we're not talking 10th of a percentage here, we're talking a certain percentage of the population, potentially. If a certain percentage of your population die, most of them is going to be in the working age, contributing to your economy. That's going to cause a huge problem with your economy. A huge problem. So yeah.
Well said, Michael Smith. The full article is linked below. The Guardian has run with this article. Immunity passports could speed up return to work after COVID-19. German researchers studying how lockdown restrictions could be lifted for some people. So in order to get around and go about your daily life, you're going to have some kind of document that proves you've taken the snake oil. I suspect these will be shown at police checkpoints.
And notice, people, how Dave said snake oil. Okay? Because in this video, Dave exposes himself as an anti-vaxxer. Because so far, I didn't actually know that he was an anti-vaxxer. I knew that he was, denying a lot of the science surrounding, viruses and bacteria and other types of outbreaks. But I didn't know that he went so far as to actually deny the efficacy of vaccines. But he actually does, and you're going to notice later on in this video. He's an anti-vaxxer. It's proven now. So yeah. It just keeps getting better and better with Dave, doesn't it?
Points or at the entry into buildings like we're seeing now in China. The Nation has this article. Deutsche Bank predicts immunity passports for travel as future AI tools will predict COVID-19 case severity. The COVID-19 outbreak may lead nations to create a new kind of immunity passport to try to ensure that travelers entering various countries are in a good state of health. A study by Germany.
Yeah, but see, Dave, here's the thing. On one hand, and this is what I mean, where, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. On one hand, you complain that the economy has stopped, okay? And you need to get the economy going again. Otherwise, there's going to be, economic and social consequences, all right? So you're saying this. Well, Dave, this is how you get the economy back quickly, okay? If you have a document that proves that people have immunity, they can go into society before everyone else. This is not hard, David. This is pretty fucking obvious. It should be, at least. Yeah.
These Deutsche Bank, seen by Barron's magazine, suggests. Deutsche Bank expects tourism to be the last industry to return to normal and says people from countries which cannot prove their good health somehow will most likely have to cancel their trips. Alternatively, proof of good health could come in the form of an immunity passport, a secure smartphone-based tool containing information about the user's well-being. If the technology becomes available quickly enough, such immunity passports could promote tourism and travel. If not, the ban on travel could be replaced with mandatory periods of self-isolation upon arrival, researchers say. Well, I guess we should just trust the researchers and completely change our entire lives for a virus that we have no idea how many people it's actually killed, because the death numbers are completely unreliable, as I've explained in my previous videos.
Yes, you've tried to explain that, but you've failed miserably, and you haven't actually said anything of value. And I've debunked you numerous times when it comes to that. No, look, Dave, if you have so many thousands of people dying all at once, you don't have time to do a proper scientific study. You just don't. Like, how you don't come to that conclusion on your own, I don't understand. You're a fucking moron. But yeah, it's true. So look, the best thing you can do is to say that, hey, these people died, okay, and they were showing symptoms of infection, and we know from taking a sample that they had this virus in their body. Okay, that means that we have to put them down as a casualty of the virus. Now, does that mean that the virus alone killed them? Of course not. But it means that it contributed at least to their death. And that's what they count as a casualty. That's not wrong, Dave. It may not be as accurate as you would like it to be, but it's technically speaking not wrong. And it's the best thing you can do right now. You know, because I don't know if you notice, in a pandemic, you know, the resources in the medical industry are kind of, you know, they're kind of, you know, stretched very thin. This is the best thing you can do with the resources right now. So no, the death numbers are, for the most part, not erroneous.
This article is from Business Insider. The US is using mobile ad data to track people's movements during coronavirus lockdown. This is from The Times. Coronavirus in Scotland. App surveillance can help to lift restrictions. Scotland will emerge from lockdown before coronavirus has been eradicated because authorities hope to limit the spread through phone surveillance, the interim chief medical officer has said. That's comforting. Other countries are doing similar things, by the way. Business Insider has this article. Compulsory selfies and contact tracing. Authorities everywhere are using smartphones to track the coronavirus, and it's part of a massive increase in global surveillance. The US is reportedly gathering data from the ads industry to get an idea of where people are congregating.
See, here's the thing though, Dave. Basically what they're doing is they're using the infrastructure on the internet that's already there. They're not adding anything. You know, basically what they're... Okay, it's funny because what they're doing, Dave, is they're using the private market, which you claim to love, to spy on you. So, look, I'm just saying, okay? The government is spying on you, sure. You may not like it. I don't like it. There's better ways to deal with an outbreak than to spy on people like this. So if you want to complain about it, I understand, and I'm not for this either, but you gotta understand. It's fucking ironic, isn't it, that the way they're spying on you is by using the private companies. Isn't that ironic? Isn't that ironic? Ultimately, it's the tool of capitalism that they're using to spy on you. Very, very odd indeed. Just a funny little observation. And it's funny because Dave is basically, he has described himself as pretty much a fucking ANCAP. Although, to be honest, he's a bit too authoritative to be one. But he's definitely a full-on capitalist. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. Nothing wrong. There is a place for commerce, definitely. And I'm not against that by any means. And I think that, capitalism, it has its place. But I, like the majority of people, realize that you still need to have restrictions in place. But anyway, that's another topic.
South Korea gives out detailed information about patients' whereabouts. South Korea has gone a step further than any other countries, tracking individuals' phones and creating a publicly available map to allow other citizens to check whether they may have crossed paths with any coronavirus patients.
Yeah, so in other words, there's positive feedback with the public. No, but that's actually good, because it means that they have actual feedback from the public. The public are actually consenting to it. That's not a bad thing, Dave. That's good.
Iran asked citizens to download an invasive app. Vice.
Well, yeah, of course, it's Iran. It's an authoritarian regime. Of course, they're going to do this. Now, look, Dave. Listen, are authoritarians going to use a crisis like this to further their goals? Well, no shit. Of course they are. No one's denying this. But that doesn't mean that any attempt at simply just, mapping where the outbreaks are to, do a post-analysis that can be useful against a second wave in fall, that doesn't mean that it's bad. Just because there's bad actors who are going to use this situation to further their goal, it doesn't mean that everyone is going to, that doesn't mean that every goal here is to be authoritarian. Yeah.
Reported that Iran's government endorsed a coronavirus diagnosis app that collected users' real-time location data. Israel passed new laws to spy on its citizens.
Of course, it's Israel. It's Israel. Israel is notorious for this. Israel is the land of hypocrisy. I don't know what to tell you.
As part of a broad set of new surveillance measures approved by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on March 17th, Israel's security agency will no longer have to obtain a court order to track individuals' phones. The new law
Again,
also
I'm not
stipulates all data
surprised.
collected must be deleted after 30 days. Singapore has an app which can trace people within 2 meters of infected patients. Taiwan can tell when quarantined people have left the house. Taiwan has activated what it calls an electronic fence, which tracks mobile phone data and alerts authorities when someone who is supposed to be quarantined at home is leaving the house. Austria is using...
Yeah, look, I don't like this sort of thing. I don't. But do you know what the solution then, Dave, is? You actually obey. If enough people don't obey, the quarantine, the government knows that, okay, we can't have faith in people to actually do the right thing on their own. And I don't like these sorts of measures, but here's the thing, Dave. Sometimes, I'm not saying that this is the majority of these cases, of course, but sometimes you have to use measures like this to fight a crisis. You may not like it, but sometimes it's necessary. Should you be skeptical? Yeah, of course. And I am. But at the same time, don't be fucking naive.
using anonymized data to map people's movements. Poland is...
Okay, it's an anonymous. It's anonymized. I'm not going to bother reading the article, but it says literally in the headline, it's anonymized, implying that it's not personal data. Yeah, again, I don't know. I could be wrong. I'm just reading the fucking headlines here. But Dave, what I'm wondering is, why do you only show the headlines of these articles? Why don't you show the actual text? It's a little bit sus. I'm not gonna lie.
Is making people send selfies to prove they're quarantining correctly. Now, Bill Gates believes...
if that's true, I don't like that either. I don't. But look, like I said, are authoritarians going to use this as an opportunity? Of course they are. I mean, yeah, it's a no-brainer. That doesn't mean, though, that every single fucking effort by government is an authoritarian action. And again, do you know how you avoid them implementing this sort of thing? If everyone just fucking does what the fuck they're supposed to do and just stays at home, then the government has no excuse to do this sort of thing.
That large public gatherings can't happen until everyone is widely vaccinated.
There's a lot of dialogue between our foundation experts and the government now, but what does opening up look like? You know, which activities like schools, have such benefit and can be done in a way that the risk of transmission is very low?
Yeah.
And which activities, like mass gatherings, may be, in a certain sense, more optional. And so until you're widely vaccinated, those may not come back at all.
Just want to point out that nobody elected Bill Gates as a politician, and also, he's not a doctor.
Well, no shit, Sherlock. And yeah, now he's going to share a bunch of information about the supposed vaccinations by Bill Gates and his fund. And keep in mind, the source here is an anti-vaxxer. So he's going to rely entirely on a fucking anti-vaxxer. So, yeah, great job, Dave.
He also said this before.
But we're going to have this intermediate period of opening up, and it won't be normal until we get an amazing vaccine to the entire world.
Gates has previously said the following on a TED Talk about climate change back in 2010.
The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
Now, by reproductive health services, I presume he's talking about abortion. As to how vaccines reduce the population.
Well, yeah. I mean, the best thing is for people to use a condom or for women to take the pill, but, you know, sometimes, yeah, an abortion is necessary. So what?
That's lost on me. I thought they were supposed to extend life. Gates also recently held an AMA where he was asked the following question. What changes are we going to have to make on how businesses operate to maintain our economy while providing social distancing? And he says the question of which businesses should keep going is tricky. Certainly food supply and the health system. We still need water, electricity and the internet. Supply chains for critical things need to be maintained. Countries are still figuring out what to keep running. Eventually, we will have some digital certificates to show who has recovered or been tested recently, or when we have a vaccine, who has received it. Now, Dr. Fauci on Trump's coronavirus task force also seems to be open to the possibility of immunity certificates for Americans.
Can you imagine a time where Americans carry certificates of immunity?
That's possible. I mean, it's one of those things that we talk about when we want to make sure that we know who the vulnerable people are and not. This is something that's being discussed. I think it might actually have some merit under certain circumstances.
Bill Gates also said this.
Here, we clearly need a vaccine that works in the upper age range because they're most at risk of that. And doing that so that you amp it up so it works in older people and yet you don't have side effects. If we have, 1 in 10,000 side effects, that's, way more, 700,000 people who will suffer from that. So
Fauci is now saying that US coronavirus deaths will be more like 60,000.
And it looks more like the 60,000 than the 100 to 200,000. But having said that, we better be careful that we don't say, okay, we're doing so well, we could pull back.
Wow, that's a big reduction to the previously predicted 100,000 or 200,000 deaths.
Yeah, who knew social distancing works? Oh, I forgot. It can't possibly be that now, can it? No. Has to be that they lied. Yeah, it makes so much more sense. It makes so much more sense that Trump's cabinet would partake in a lie that would lead to a social and economic collapse that would potentially make Trump not being able to be reelected in an election year. Yeah, it makes perfect sense, Dave. It makes perfect fucking sense. Wow, big brain logic going on here.
Or the initially reported 2 million deaths. So
2 million deaths, that number was for if you didn't have a quarantine. But you leave that part out, you fucking snake. Dave, he said 2 million people if there is no quarantine. That is what he said. He did not say that it was going to be 2 million people with a quarantine. He said 2 million people without a quarantine and 100,000 to 200,000 with a quarantine. Now it's going to be lower than 100,000 it looks, which is good. It's a good thing. But it doesn't mean that anybody lied.
100,000 people potentially having side effects from the vaccine. Sounds like the vaccine might be more trouble than the virus.
No. Vaccines have a very low rate of giving side effects. Like a very low rate.
really understanding the safety at gigantic scale across all age ranges, pregnant, male, female, undernourished, existing comorbidities, it's very, very hard. And that actual decision of, okay, let's go and give this vaccine to the entire world, governments will have to be involved because there will be some risk and indemnification needed before that can be decided on.
Well, indeed, Bill. Indemnity would be useful, I suppose, especially given your own track record with vaccinations.
Oh, here we go.
This article is from Children's Health Defense, written by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., chairman of Children's Health Defense.
Now, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he is a notorious anti-vaxxer.
Gates' globalist vaccine agenda. A win-win for pharma and mandatory vaccination. Vaccines, for Bill Gates, are a strategic philanthropy that feed his many vaccine-related businesses, including Microsoft's ambition to control a global vaccination ID enterprise and give him dictatorial control of global health policy. Gates' obsession with vaccines seems to be fueled by a conviction to save the world with technology. Promising his share of $450 million of $1.2 billion to eradicate polio, Gates took control of India's National Technical Advisory Group on Immunization, which mandated up to 50 doses of polio vaccines through overlapping immunization programs to children before the age of 5. Indian doctors blame the Gates campaign for a devastating non-polio acute flaccid paralysis epidemic, that's abbreviated to NPAFP, that paralyzed 490,000 children beyond expected rates between 2000 and 2017. In 2017, the Indian government dialed back Gates' vaccine regimen and asked Gates and his vaccine policies to leave India. NPAFP rates dropped precipitously. In 2017, the World Health Organization reluctantly admitted that the global explosion in polio is predominantly vaccine strain. The most frightening epidemics in Congo, Afghanistan, and the Philippines are all linked to vaccines. In fact, by 2018, 70% of global polio cases were vaccine strain.
Okay, so keep in mind, he's reading this from a website that is run by Robert F. Kennedy, who's a known anti-vaxxer. Now, I couldn't actually find the actual website where he's reading this from, so I found a website where they've mirrored this article. And basically, what they're reading is, what they've been writing here is, in 2017, the World Health 70% of global polio cases were vaccine strain. Now, here's the thing. When you read that, you think, oh dear, that's horrible. You mean to tell me that the majority of people who end up with paralyzation from polio do so from the vaccine instead of the actual illness itself? My God, that's horrible. And don't get me wrong, it is horrible. But when you look at the numbers, it's not what you think. It's really not what you think. Okay, so here's the thing. The funny thing is, this is the article that they link to. They link to this article that shows how ridiculous they're being. Mutant strains of polio vaccine now causes more paralysis than wild polio. And you know, when you read this, you think, oh my God, maybe there's something to this paranoia surrounding vaccines. But then you read and you find that for the first time, the number of children paralyzed by mutant strains of the polio vaccine are greater than the number of children paralyzed by polio. So far in 2017, there have been only 6 cases of wild polio reported anywhere in the world. By wild, public health officials mean the disease caused by poliovirus found naturally in the environment. Okay. Gee, I wonder how it ended up that low in the first place. Could it be vaccinations? By contrast, there have been 21 cases of vaccine-derived polio this year. These cases look remarkably similar to regular polio, but laboratory tests show they've caused remnants of the oral polio vaccine that have gotten loose in the environment, mutated, and regained their ability to paralyze unvaccinated children. It's actually an interesting conundrum, and the very tool you're using for polio eradication is causing the problem. But here's the thing. Notice the numbers here. So you have annually right now about 6 kids in all of the world contracting polio at this point in the world. That's how rare polio is. Which, by the way, is thanks to the vaccinations, the mandatory vaccinations of every child. And basically what's happened is you have such a low rate of infection by polio in the environment that it's actually lower than the fail rate of the vaccine. And the fail rate of the vaccine, mind you, is very, 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 very low. But this is how successful the vaccines are, okay? The vaccinations against polio have become so effective that the vaccines themselves actually have a higher chance of giving you symptoms of polio than actual polio. That's what's going on here. There's nothing nefarious. It's just basic math. So, yeah, my God, it's like they link to this article. That's the funny thing here. They link to this article, and all you have to do is to actually read the article, and you will realize, oh, it's not what they make it seem. It's not nearly that bad. So, right. Anyway, I think that's enough of this video. I think, you know, in order for this to not take too long, I think I have to jump to the next video. Okay, so what you're about to watch now is a man who is the very definition of creepy. And I don't say that lightly, mind you. This man is fucking creepy. Okay? And he is like your fucking standard, stereotypical, don't tread on me person who seems to think that just because he didn't sign like an actual physical contract, you know, the social contract doesn't exist apparently, which is about as retarded as saying that, hey, I didn't sign an actual form that said that I couldn't just fucking, you know, hit you, knock you unconscious, and steal your fucking shit. So therefore, that must be okay then, because I didn't consent to that. It's just as dumb. It's just as dumb. But anyways, so this guy, he actually thinks that his right to go out and party weighs heavier than people's right not to be exposed to a fucking virus that can kill them. Just watch it. This is unbelievable.
It's very interesting to me that you use this word right. You've been using this repeated, a right to assemble, a right to associate, a right to speak. A right is not something that's contingent. It's something that you actually possess. It's not granted to you by the government. It's something you own by virtue of your humanity. It's hard to talk about rights in these times, and we don't apparently have the right to our own property because the government can shut down our business on grounds that it's unessential, right? We apparently don't.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but when you have a pandemic, your nail salon just isn't essential. The grocery store, is essential. The pharmacy is essential. Even the gas station, you can make an argument, is essential, because what if people need to make an emergency trip to the hospital? They need to have fuel, So, but your nail salon or whatever, your fucking bar, no, that's not essential. It's just not.
We don't have the right even to leave our homes. So once you take that away, I mean, Dave, I don't want to be alarmist about this or anything, but look, from a philosophical or intellectual point of view, we are living the practical reality of what comes very close to being a totalitarian state right now. Fortunately, thank you, political leaders, you're letting the grocery stores work. Fortunately, they're private. Thank you.
Yeah, no one's been talking about nationalizing the fucking grocery stores. Like, and also, do you realize how fucking insulting this is to everyone who actually lives in a fucking dictatorship? I'm sure the people in Saudi Arabia, they probably want to punch you, to be honest, in your punchable face, because, yeah, they live under actual authoritarianism. The government using its rightful authority to shut down society for a little while to deal with a crisis, that's not authoritarianism. That's just fucking common sense. Yeah. But yeah, it's just yeah. Someone in Saudi Arabia or in North Korea, if they were to watch this, they would probably just they would probably want to punch you. Just being honest, they would probably want to punch you. Yeah.
You for letting us have pharmacies. They're private entities too. So we're grateful for the little bit of private markets that are left. But the attack on everybody else and the attack on our rights is shocking. And it's the social consequences of this are unspeakable, really. I mean, people are not going to comply. They're not compliant now. I'm sure you know this. In fact, you've probably attended them. But there are speakeasies and all over New York City popping up where you can go to dinner and gather more than 5, more than 10, even 30 people, and they're drinking, they're having dinner together. They're in defiance of the law. Friends of mine in Manhattan sit in their pen.
Yes, and gee, I wonder why it's taking so long for New York to recover. Could there be a correlation? There's a quarantine in place to give the virus less opportunity to spread from person to person, but if people are gonna, meet in a secret anyway, what the fuck is the point of quarantine? Yeah.
Penthouses and every night at after nightfall.
Now, just keep in mind what he's talking about here. Like, this shows how sheltered this guy is. This guy has never done one day of honest work. Let's be honest. He has not worked a fucking day in his life. He lives in a secluded fucking apartment or some shit, or in a fucking gated community, and he hangs out with people who do the same. He lives in a fucking bubble. That's the only explanation as to how you can think that the government shutting things down temporarily to deal with a crisis, that's the only way you can possibly rationalize that as, some kind of authoritarian streak.
People rush out into the streets with noisemakers just to illustrate that they believe in freedom, and for God.
Well, here's the thing. People believe in a lot of things. And yeah, I agree, freedom is important. But there's plenty of freedoms that people believe they have, but you don't agree with. People believe that they have the freedom of not having to pay for their healthcare for something they can't help. I would go on a wager and say that you wouldn't agree with them. So, yeah, this notion of freedom, it's almost like it's on its own kind of meaningless, and it seems like it differs from person to person. It seems like you're trying to enforce your subjective opinion as though it's objective.
Say, do we not believe in freedom anymore?
No, we do. We definitely do. But we also believe in common sense. And I'm sorry, but if you live in a society, and that's what you do, you can expect things from society, but in turn, society can expect things from you. And yeah, that's the social contract. And I know that triggers you people. I know you don't believe in it. But then again, I have to ask you, what is the non-aggression principle if not a fucking social contract? Boom. You're a bunch of fucking hypocrites.
The politicians presume that we're like pieces on a chessboard that can just move around. But you know what?
Where? I honestly, where are you seeing this? I don't see it.
It's not true. That is not the human mind. We are not inanimate objects. We are not birds in cages. We will live free, one way or the other.
So what would you say? So of course I'm with you, but what would you say to the people?
Yeah, so basically Dave seems to agree. Yeah, this is a bunch of nonsense. We should just fucking let people be exposed to a virus that will inevitably spread then to people with pre-existing conditions and the elderly. Like, even if we ignore the fact that there are actually young people who are perfectly healthy who have succumbed to this virus, let's ignore that. Even if we were to to give these people that it only affected these people. No. I mean, apparently that's acceptable. These people's right to not be exposed to this virus apparently doesn't take as much of a precedence as your right to go out on a Friday night and have fun. And think about it, people. That is what these fucking sociopaths are saying, isn't it? Their right to get it on is more important than your grandmother's right to know that someone that who takes care of her at her home hasn't been infected by someone that's been running into these people. Her life is forfeited because these people just can't stand not going out on a Friday night. Yeah.
People that would say, but all of those people, your friends that are going out onto the streets at night and the people that are getting together at speakeasies and going out more than they have to go out and the rest of it and exercising their rights and freedom, that those are the people who are going to keep this thing spreading because people don't know when to rein in their own personal responsibility and do something so that society doesn't crumble. Something like that.
Well, I think that at the height of the Enlightenment, where we discovered this idea of human freedom, there was also disease.
Yes, and the average lifespan was several decades shorter. Could there be a causal relationship, perhaps? I don't know.
We didn't have very clean water. There were.
Yeah. So why do you want to emulate that time? That's what I'm wondering.
Annual viruses that came along and killed people, and there were pandemics and so on, but they still somehow came to believe that human beings have the right to speak, associate, and trade. And we were.
Oh yeah, no one's stopping you. You just need to make sure that you don't do it, too many of you at the same time in person, because that's how a virus physically spreads. This is not hard to understand. And also, the idea that quarantine isn't part of the American tradition, that's fallacious. No, there's plenty of instances in American history where there's been a quarantine of an area, at least, because there's a spread of an illness. Curfews have been implemented because of illnesses in the United States. This is nothing new. The only difference now is that this is so big that it's been, done to all of the nation.
Work around it. And part of the belief in freedom is the confidence that society has the intelligence to deal with things like viruses that come along. And the existence of disease does not disable the whole of modernity. It just doesn't. We can't think this way. Modernity was forced at the time, and there were diseases. And even back to the Black Death in Venice in the 13th century, when it was still dangerous, they still kept trade going. There was some towns would come up with restrictions and that sort of thing, but the idea of violating people's rights, fundamental rights to live and choose and speak and everything, was even unthinkable 500 years ago.
Please tell me, who's instigating anything that prevents you from speaking? Please do tell. Where's the infringement of freedom of speech here? Because I sure as fuck don't see it. And you're not going to be able to give me a fucking example either, because it doesn't fucking exist. You're being hyperbolic because, well, you're a right-wing SJW. Just like you have SJWs on the left, you have SJWs on the right, and you're one of those people. Whatever happens, you're a victim of something.
I mean, our response we've done here is pre-modern, it's medieval, it's 11th and 12th century style stuff, except with 21st century technology. And we're not responding to these things scientifically, even the slightest bit. The response by the political class, and I mean from about March 15th onward, was nothing short of mystical, superstitious. It was a panicked response. Let's just throw everybody in a cage of their own creation and punish anybody for coming out of it. And I totally forgive people who are going to these speakeasies. You could say that's prudent. They shouldn't be doing that. But for God's sake, people exercising their fundamental rights, I'd say we need more of that, not less of that right now.
No, because this virus is a physical thing, and it physically spreads by people engaging in, being in their presence. The way you deal with this, because we don't have a vaccine right now, is to prevent people from, meeting like that. Yeah.
Do you think that's partly just human nature, that so many people just operate purely in fear? So, like a month ago when we had that 2-day window where suddenly everything shut down out of nowhere, they announced the entire NBA season was canceled, and then they canceled all these public events, and everything sort of happened within a 2-day thing, that there becomes this odd rush to cancel because you don't want to be the one guy who's going against the crowd, right? You don't want to be the one guy who says, no, we're not going to cancel our season, we're not going to cancel all of our things, we're going to wait it out a little bit, knowing that the risk that you take of being just destroyed by the media and everything else on the other side is probably worse than just going along with the crowd.
That's probably part of it. Companies care about their image, and thank you, Dave, for exposing the fact that businesses care more about being perceived as good guys than actually doing the right thing. And yet you want to give the market carte blanche to do things. It's very odd. You sort of admit here in your argument that businesses care more about virtue signaling than actually saving people's lives, and yet you want to give those companies more, you want to relax regulations and restrictions and whatever. It's very odd. It's very odd, isn't it? Yeah, very odd.
Yeah, I understand your point. I have my doubts that there was any public support for this actually at all. Now, it's entirely up to a private venue.
I want you to go down to the hospital and take a look at the fucking nurses who are now dealing with the aftermath of the inadequate response to this virus. I want you to look at them and tell me that there's no public support for a quarantine. You fucking piece of shit.
Whether or not they want to have these gatherings or accept the liability associated with NBA games or South by Southwest, and that sort of thing. South by Southwest didn't choose to cancel that conference. That was a governmental decision. So I'm looking at this, and I'm not saying whether that was...
Oh, so it's even worse than what they've said then. They don't care about human lives at all. They don't even care about their image. They wanted to go ahead, apparently, then, and just let people get infected. Well, thankfully the government responded then. Don't know what to tell you.
Maybe South by Southwest should have. I don't know. I think about this a lot. I'm not actually sure about that because that's mostly all young people there who are actually not in any great danger from COVID.
Sure, not as many young people are dying from this thing as anyone else. It's comparatively speaking rare, but even when it comes to the young demographic, this thing is definitely more deadly than the common flu. So it's still serious.
I'm not sure about that, and it's hard to do counterfactuals here. But with this much, Dave, I know, and I think you know too, politicians, by which I mean governors, mayors, senators and congressmen and so on, are not owners of anything. Their main job is to get elected again. That's it. So they don't really have a financial or economic stake. They don't have skin in the game, apart from the desire to get voters to vote for them again. And there was a sudden panic on the part of political leaders at all levels, really, that if anybody died while they were in office, that they would somehow be blamed for this, unless...
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Thank you for just pointing out that, hey, politicians want to get reelected. And yeah, people dying under their watch, that's probably not going to get them reelected. So, yeah, it's... Oh, God.
Unless they just bludgeoned people, and ruined people's lives. So they somehow believed there's less risk to steal people's property and arrest people in their homes than it was to be blamed for public death, and that gets us back to a problem that began this discussion: the role of the media here, because what they're really fearing ultimately is this cancel culture, the Twitter mobs and the New York Times editorial page and the media culture that's lost all rationality and clarity. They're afraid of being denounced and dragged through the mud and drawn and quartered and so on by the press. So I ultimately
doesn't that feel like a perfect storm to you? Doesn't that feel like a perfect storm of the end of the media that we've all been seeing? And as you said before, you didn't even want to see it, but that so many of us have seen the end of mainstream media. We've watched our academic and political institutions crumble. And then something like this comes in and just takes the last remaining foundation of it and then adds fear to it. And you take just fearful people who don't even understand what their rights are, as you alluded to earlier. And then you really have the perfect storm to control everybody.
No, what you guys have is the perfect storm to getting a bunch of fucking people killed. Yeah. I can't believe that Dave has fallen so far from grace that he now insinuates that the vast majority of scientists who are working on this are conspiring with the government to reduce people's rights. It really is sickening, isn't it? So yeah, this is Matt Christensen, and yeah, just like the others, he's gonna argue that the government caring about people not getting infected and dying, potentially, that it's a tyranny, you see. Let's just watch.
I gotta hand it to the good people of Michigan this week. You set the stage to get this country back on track, and you're one of the first states to have the balls to say, stop, that's enough, we get it, we gotta take some precautions, but sorry, Governor, you've arbitrarily seized enough of our basic freedoms for us to feel plenty safe, thank you. No more. And we have to say no more, because the more petty power we grant, the more petty power they'll seize, as evidenced by Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer's power grab that makes even her colleagues in New York and California blush. It all starts with seemingly common sense restrictions, but then the nonsense gets added incrementally until the sale of plant seeds and home maintenance products is banned as non-essential, but totally frivolous purchases like lottery tickets are just fine. Step right up, folks. Gamble away in these uncertain times because we don't want to compromise a state revenue stream, just your revenue stream. And if you don't like it...
Right. I'm sorry, Matt, but, you know, plant seeds and all that stuff, that's not essential right now. No, what should be open is grocery stores and pharmacies and such, but yeah, you don't have to go to Best Buy right now. Like, it's not essential. It's just not essential. I don't know what to fucking tell you. Yeah, and when it comes to lottery tickets, I'm too tired at this point to look it up or anything. But if that's true, yeah, you know, yeah, it's stupid, I guess. But hey, no response is gonna be perfect, you know. But that being said, look, no, shutting down some businesses because they're not essential, but no, that makes sense. And them selling lottery tickets doesn't take away the fact that it's not wrong to do that. Yeah.
Don't even think about heading up north to visit your family and escape the nonsense. That's banned. Don't even think about...
Well, yeah. That's the whole point of a lockdown. You know, we want to prevent the spread of this thing, and then it doesn't make sense that you allow people to travel freely as though there is no lockdown. That defeats the whole purpose. Like, Matt, this is the point. This is the whole point of it. This is literally the fucking point. This is why you do what you do. This is why you do this.
About having your buddy or your girlfriend over to pass the time. That is banned. Where's the coherence here? There is none. Asked basic questions about how any of this makes any sense at all, Gretchen Whitmer tacitly admits it doesn't. It's useless. It would be the status quo anyway because of late season snowfall.
What's the thinking behind your particular stay-at-home order?
We just had snow. I've got snow on the ground here in Michigan right now in Lansing. We're expecting, up to 30 inches in the Upper Peninsula. The fact that we're cracking down on people traveling between homes or planting or landscaping or golfing really for a couple more weeks isn't going to meaningfully impact people's ability to do it because the snow will do that in and of itself.
Well, if it hasn't...
Well, yeah, Matt. I mean, honestly, like, yeah. So even if she didn't do this sort of thing, you would still be, you would still be restricted in your movement. I mean, does that mean that Mother Nature is a fascist? Does that mean that Mother Nature doesn't want you to see your grandparents or some shit? Like, I really don't see the point here. It's like, yeah, this is dumb. This is just really, really dumb.
No effect, then why are you doing it? If that's the case, the only plausible explanation is the arbitrary and recreational abuse of power. Your livelihood is non-essential. Your family is non-essential. Your access to your own property, if you have to travel to get to it, is non-essential. Just...
You know what, Matt? If you love your parents, and they are elderly, and we know that that's one of the demographics that does the worst when it comes to this virus. If you care about them, why do you want to see them anyway and risk infecting them? The only way you can rationally justify still seeing them is if you also believe that this virus is not a big deal, which the numbers speak against you. In fact, let's take a look at Michigan. Alright, so let's take a look at the US here. You have 761,991 known cases. And you have over, almost 41,000 deaths. Okay? So yeah, it's still increasing here. So Michigan is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Michigan is the 6th worst hit state of the US. Okay, so Michigan has 31,424 known cases. Total deaths is 2,391. Okay, now let's do some basic math on this. 31,424. So yes, the mortality rate right now in Michigan is 7.6%. Now, let me just add, though, before anybody starts fucking screeching, there's a detractor. Yes, of course, this is not the true mortality rate. Of course not. Because you probably have about 10 times more people who are infected, but, simply haven't gotten tested. So let's divide this by 10. Well, what we find then is that we have still almost 1% mortality rate. And we know, by the way, that this increases the older you are. So if we look at people who are over the age of 80, there's a 1 in 6 chance that they die. So let's take 1 divided by 6. That's 16.7%, sort of. And we divide that by 10. That is still almost a 2% mortality rate. So, Matt, when you go and see your grandmother, and you're infected, even if the mortality rate is 10 times lower than the official mortality rate, there's still a 2% chance, roundabout, that you're going to end up killing her if you do that. Now, I don't know about you, but if that was my grandmother, I would wait with seeing her until this thing had calmed down. Okay? Because a 2% mortality rate is way too high to accept. But then, of course, yeah, you don't believe that this is a big deal, now do you? Because that's the kind of piece of shit you are.
Just twiddle your thumbs and wait for your state issue check, because safety means relinquishing all personal responsibility you have for yourself and your family. It's for the greater good, she says, as though the greater good hasn't been the pursuit of all of history's tyrants, petty or otherwise.
Dude, I don't know what to tell you. It literally is for the greater good. I see what you're saying, but you got to keep in mind, those governments have been doing nefarious things without a justification. When it comes to this, there's a justification. And besides, no one is stopping you from going outside, okay? You're still allowed to go to the store, get your groceries. You're still allowed to get gas in your car. You're still allowed to go to the pharmacy and whatever, because these are essential businesses. However, you're not allowed to do certain things because that means that you would be in too close of a proximity to people, and that would risk spreading this to people. And that's the point of a fucking lockdown during a pandemic. You need to prevent this thing from spreading. There's nothing authoritarian about this. This is just common sense. Just like you have a right to expect certain things from society, society has certain things to expect from you as a citizen.
That is the context in which Michiganders in the thousands protested at the state capitol in Lansing on Wednesday. The event, dubbed Operation Gridlock, the idea being to occupy the streets around the Capitol building and make mass opposition known. Most participants, though not all, stayed in their cars. Some protested on foot on the Capitol grounds.
So very conscious of social distancing and the rest of it. But that's going too far. That is close to totalitarian kind of stuff.
I hope Whitmer understands that she's not just going to be able to rule Michigan like other politicians rule, China or something like that. We're going to take our liberties and we're going to keep them and we're going to fight for them.
If there's one thing...
Please do tell me, love. Please do tell me. Where is your infringement of freedom of speech? And where is someone taking away your internet access? Where is it? Where are the deaf panels? That's what I'm wondering. Nowhere. Because this is a temporary lockdown designed to deal with an outbreak. And look, it's very funny how you people don't criticize Trump. Like, these people will demonstrate against the governor doing this when Trump, your president that you elected, is doing the exact same thing, but for the entire nation. I find it very odd how you're willing to criticize one person who does the same thing as Trump, but not Trump himself, even though he's literally engaging in what you're criticizing. I wonder why that is.
For which I can credit Gretchen Whitmer. It's not intervening with these protesters by force, but...
Yeah, you know, it's almost like you don't live in a police state or something. It's almost like she's respecting their right to protest, which is very odd, because if she was an authoritarian, she would crack down on them, wouldn't she? But hey, what the fuck do I know?
That praise couldn't be more tepid. A governor respecting the first and most fundamental rights of her people isn't an achievement. That's the first line in the job description. But hey, a D...
Well, thank you, Captain Obvious.
D- is still better than an F, right? Governor Whitmer...
No, so far I don't see anything to give a D- even.
Watched the peasant rebellion from her perch in the Capitol building, inviting a CNN reporter into her office to broadcast her scowl of displeasure. And you know how this goes. I support your rights, but you're all scum of the earth for exercising them.
A small segment of the state is protesting, and that's their right. The sad part is, though, that the more that they're out and about, the more likely they are to spread COVID-19, and the more likely we're going to have to take this posture, you know, for a longer period of time.
Well, alternatively...
Yeah. That's how it works, you know. This is a virus that we know is ridiculously contagious, and it spreads physically from people to people because people are in too close of proximity to each other. There's nothing controversial about what you just said. It's the truth.
They wouldn't have to protest if you hadn't deleted their jobs and tried to seize control of every aspect of their lives, as though her aim is to return to freedom and personal liberty in the future anyhow. Come on.
Yeah, look, Matt, I'm going to say something that you're not going to like, but it needs to be said. Have you heard of something called martial law? You see, even the founding fathers of America realized that there might be a crisis in the future where the government may temporarily be given the authority to have a lockdown. In other words, what they're doing in these states, what this governor is doing, is not in any way unconstitutional. The Constitution has already taken measures to deal with this sort of thing. Governors are allowed to do this. If you don't like it, well, I guess your beef is with the founding fathers, the people that you claim to fucking care so much about, and their document the Constitution. But the Constitution doesn't agree with you. Besides, this isn't even a martial law. This is the softest form of a lockdown you can possibly fucking imagine. Like, this is ridiculously soft, to be honest, compared to what they did in China. Or even most European nations. And, yeah, so this is not even a martial law situation, but even if they were to proclaim martial law, they would still legally be allowed to do so. And if you don't like it, well, I guess your beef is with the founding fathers. Get fucked, Matt. Get fucked.
Come on, guys. Just obey my strict and arbitrary authority today, so I can...
a virus is not arbitrary. It actually fucking exists.
Restore freedom tomorrow. Yeah, that's the snakiest oil ever sold. But she's sticking with this sales pitch, going as far as to accuse the protest participants of threatening people's lives.
It was a car...
Well, yeah, they are. I hate to break it to you, but they are. Like, do you know how viruses spread?
protests, and they were backed up to in front of a hospital. There was an ambulance that could not get into the bay for 10.
Right, now we get into a part where I can't confirm whether or not this is true or not, so yeah, this particular part of the video I'm just going to ignore because I can't confirm nor deny any of the allegations here. So I don't know if this is true or not, but yeah.
10 minutes. They absolutely impacted people's lives today and threatened people's lives. And we'll never know the precise number of COVID-19 cases that come as a result of this gathering, but we know that there will be some.
We'll also never know the true number of people infected because Gretchen Whitmer invited an entire CNN production team into the state capitol so she could exercise her First Amendment rights.
Again, no one is stopping you from protesting. Hell, even though these people are a danger to the public by doing this, not even then did she interfere. You know? No one's stopping you, man. There is no infringement on your First Amendment rights. Stop claiming there is. It's an insult to anyone who's actually living in a police state.
Or was that risk worth taking because her speech is more important than yours? Her speech is essential.
No. She's a public official, and she invited in a camera crew, or they called her and wanted to do an interview. Regardless, she's a public official, you're not. Yeah, the media companies, it's perfectly understandable why they want her take on this. She's a public official. My God, you're a fucking idiot.
Yours isn't. As to these supposed threats, she's making the claim that protesters blocked ambulance access to nearby hospitals. There are
Yeah, this is the part where I can't confirm nor deny if that's actually true or not.
Photos on Twitter claiming to show that, but that claim is not supported by hospital staff. Multiple news stories quote a hospital spokesman saying there were no issues with ambulance access, no disruptions at all. Let's take Twitter and Whitmer's word for it. Let's say either by spreading the virus in her judgment or by blocking hospital access, these protesters threatened people's lives. Why didn't you have them arrested then, Governor? The First Amendment...
Oh my God, Matt. First you say that, oh, you know, at least she didn't arrest them, so she didn't infringe on their rights. And now you're saying that, oh, but, you know, if it was such a big deal, that she should just have arrested them. It's like, okay, which one is it? Which one is it? You can't have your cake and eat it too. And we all know. You're a fucking snake, Matt. You're a fucking slithering snake. You would froth at the mouth. You would be so excited if she decided to crack down on the protest. Then you would be like, oh my God, yes, thank you for letting this happen. Oh my God, this is gonna be so many great views for me. You would jerk off to that shit. We all know it, because that's just the kind of pathetic human being you are. You know, you're desperate to paint yourself as a fucking victim, or you know that you're not a victim and you're just doing this for the easy money. But, yeah. Regardless, you would love it if she did it. And don't pretend that you wouldn't be.
Doesn't cover threats. Respecting the First Amendment doesn't mean allowing threats. Threats are a crime. So...
Where's the threats? Can you demonstrate threats? Where are the threats? You have not demonstrated any fucking threats, you fucking moron.
Why aren't you arresting and prosecuting the criminals? Either that's bullshit, there were no threats, you just made that up to smear people who disagree with you, or...
I don't even, like, you haven't even showed where she talked about threats. Like, what she said was that these people are, you know, threatening people's lives in the sense that they're a danger to the public by being out and about and in close proximity to each other. That's, yeah. I don't see where's the controversy. Where's the controversy in this?
You are abdicating your duty as governor to enforce the laws of the state of Michigan.
No. Listen, dude. Just because she doesn't enforce the laws that exist in your head, it doesn't mean that she's not enforcing the laws. You can't just fucking replace reality with your own. Like, it doesn't work like that. It just doesn't work like that. No, she's doing everything that she's done is perfectly within the bounds of her mandate as a governor. If you don't like it, take it up with the founding fathers.
Which is it? Take your pick. Or maybe it's option C. None of this applies because a few flakes of snow were seen flying that day. And Gretchen Whitmer wasn't the only Michigan official to incoherently and hypocritically scowl upon her subjects. Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, who represents Ann Arbor and suburban Detroit, appeared on MSNBC to join the party and smear her own constituents.
People have been instructed to stay home to keep them safe. What goes through your mind when you see these images?
I understand as well as anybody does.
Now, let me just say that this woman she says some really silly things here about Trump supporters and whatever, and I don't support that sort of, you know, rhetoric. Just keep that in mind. I don't like it when people just call Trump supporters a bunch of fucking racists and whatever. So, yeah, I don't like that part of what she's about to say, but everything else, it's perfectly non-controversial, and she's not wrong when it comes to everything else that she has to say.
About being frustrated about staying home. I've been home for 31 to 32 days today by myself, no physical being near anybody. But what happened yesterday was inexcusable. People did not have masks, they did not have gloves, they did not distance themselves, they had Confederate flags, swastikas, bringing hate and fear into a time that is already full of fear and anxiety. It's just unacceptable. What they did was to help spread this disease around the state more, most likely, not contribute to the mitigation, and it just made me sad.
If watching Americans...
Yeah, and now Matt is going to point out that, hey, almost no one wore a swastika and whatever. And yeah, look, I think the vast majority of these people, they were not racists. They just wanted to protest. But when it comes to everything else she said, no, she's not wrong. These people are a danger to the public.
exercise the first and most fundamental American right to petition government makes you sad. Well,
if you don't like America, why don't you get out?
And of course...
Oh my god, that is so fucking hypocritical, Matt. It's so fucking hypocritical. That stance. Well, if you don't like it, just leave. You don't like America and the way it's run, you better leave. That rhetoric is anti-free speech. It is, Matt. And you're a huge fucking hypocrite. And you've just exposed yourself as a huge fucking hypocrite. Because on one hand, you're criticizing about your supposed right of free speech being infringed, which it's not, but let's just say for the sake of argument that it is. Even if that's true, that it's being infringed, what do? You tell anyone who has any criticism of America that they can just leave, which is anti-free speech, because no, the free speech exists so that everyone has their voice heard, even voices that you don't like, and you can't just tell people to leave America just because they don't agree with you. And it doesn't matter what they don't agree with you on, they have a right to not agree with you. And you can't just force them to leave the country because they don't agree with you. Oh my god, it's so self-defeating, isn't it? Yeah.
Because if you are a Michigander who exercises your fundamental rights, predictably, you're a racist. All because one guy was seen with a Confederate flag at the protest, and some other lady was seen making fun of Gretchen Whitmer, calling her Hitler, not endorsing Hitler. I think real Nazis would know proper swastika orientation after all. Because one person is questionable, everyone there is illegitimate. I wonder why that same reasoning doesn't apply to Congress. But notice the fundamental disconnect to the reality of the people that the Congresswoman exhibits.
Well, isn't that just fucking ironic? We hit peak irony here, folks. We hit peak irony.
I understand what it's like. I've been cooped up for 32 days with minimal contact. That is...
Yeah, and Matt, I've been cooped up here in my apartment for a month and a half. Just because I don't want to risk infecting anyone if I catch this thing. And I've been living off of my savings, but I need to go back to work now. Soon, you know? Yeah, I've been doing that myself. It's hard. It's actually hard. Like, it's social distancing to that degree. It's hard. It does take a toll on you. I miss people.
Not what the protest is about. It is not about cabin fever. It is about livelihoods. Your salary, Debbie, is still delivered through legalized theft at full rate, despite...
Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay, so taxation is theft. Okay, got it. The checklist is complete of being a fucking buffoon, alright? Right, Matt, I'm not going to go too deep into this because it's not the point of the video, but how about you employ your own fucking rhetoric? If you don't like taxes, how about you leave? No one's stopping you, you know? No one's stopping you. There's unclaimed land in the world where you could set up Ancapistan, and yeah, you don't have to pay taxes and shit. Now, how you would be able to fund any project for the community, that's another story without taxes. But you know, good luck. You can do your experiment. No one's stopping you. There's unclaimed land, but you're not going to do that because it's so much easier to just sit and bitch online, isn't it? No, taxation is not fucking theft. Stop being ridiculous. It's not even extortion. It's not even extortion. Okay. Now, is it true that you've given consent? Is it true that you have given consent to every single taxation that you're experiencing? Of course not. Of course not. But that doesn't make it theft. Oh my god, it's so dumb. It's so dumb. You know, it's like saying that just because you haven't given consent to every single form of touching to your body that you may experience in a crowd when you go see a theater. You know, when people rub shoulder to shoulder with you, just because you didn't consent to every single such interaction, obviously they're harassing you. It's like, no, that's just the nature of going to the cinema or the theater, you know? Sometimes you're gonna bump into people. It's not gonna be pleasant, but hey, you haven't consented to every single instance that happens, but in a way you have actually consented because you knew the risk. And yeah, you haven't consented to every single taxation in your life, however, by living in society and enjoying the services of the government, you are consenting to paying taxes. Like, I'm sorry, it's just how it is. I'm sorry if you personally don't like it, but you gotta understand, you belong to a tiny little fucking minority of people who live in La La Land. The vast majority of people don't have a problem with it. And if you want to argue that, oh, but that's authoritarianism, then okay. If you want to make the argument that democracy is tyranny, I mean, you can make that argument, I guess. You're perfectly allowed to, but in that case, I could just as well say that, hey, free speech can be a tool of hatred and therefore shouldn't be allowed. And then we're back to square one. So, yeah. But anyway, getting back on topic. Yeah, I don't remember what I was supposed to say here.
Despite the fact that you aren't working. The peasantry isn't so lucky. In most other contexts, no work means no income. And no income means you can't just sit leisurely at home with no worries other than how to spend the time. It's not cabin fever. It's whether your cabin gets foreclosed upon as a consequence of your big mommy brand of government supposedly keeping us safe.
See, what you do then is you have the government go in and do what Denmark has done, or the UK, or the Netherlands, and so on. The government goes in and the government pays 80% of people's wages for as long as the quarantine is, and also puts a freeze on moratoriums and whatever. You know, puts a moratorium on debts and student loans and whatever. You know, like Trump did actually with the student loans. That's what you do. Problem solved. Now you can have the quarantine and people don't have to worry about, you know, going bankrupt. Oh, but silly me, you can't do that, can you? Because that would be evil socialism. So, rats.
People are not your kids. They are citizens with rights. You can't just put them in a timeout and tell them to behave to get their allowance.
Actually, when it comes to this situation, she can, and she has done so, and she has every right to do so. Again, you don't like it, take it up with the founding fathers. Don't know what to tell you.
Because they won't, and neither will anyone else. Michiganders have started a trend that will be a wave this weekend. Protest in probably close to every state in the union, or at least the ones that have been on lockdown. If officials in these states think calling us racist degenerates instead of considering our points is going to quell this calamity, good luck with that. It didn't work to...
Now, I'm not going to lie, it is going to be funny. It is going to be funny when the vast majority of these people are going to end up getting sick, and yeah, they're going to write on Twitter like, oh my god, guys, I think this thing is actually real. I feel really bad. I might have to go to the hospital. It's going to be a little bit funny. The only sad part of it is that they will infect people who aren't retards like them. And yeah, that's the sad thing. If they only put themselves in danger by doing this, I wouldn't mind, to be honest, because, you know, fuck them. If they're that dumb, be that dumb. But the problem is their stupidity is going to have consequences for people who are innocent, and yeah, that's the sad part. Anyway, I think that's enough. I don't know if you guys noticed, but I'm getting really tired now. I've been going on for I don't know how long. Oof, I've been recording this now for over 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and I'm starting to feel it. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and yeah. I'll see you in the next one. If you enjoy my content, remember to leave a like, subscribe, and comment, even if you didn't like it, and consider supporting me on Patreon. And yeah, take care, guys. Bye.